Hello, Miss McLaughlin. I'm going to be reading chapter 29 because it's like 3 or 4 pages long and I didn't want to cut off somewhere that wasn't a good idea. So, chapter 29. Beautiful. Brian Contret added the totals again and again, toying with them, playing with them as if he were a juggler and they were fascinating figures of delight. He couldn't wait to report the totals to Brother Leon. In the past few days the volume of sales had risen staggeringly. Staggeringly was the correct word. Brian felt as if he were drunk on the statistics, like figures were liquor, making him light-headed, giddy, and dizzy. I don't know how anybody can get drunk on statistics. What had happened, he wasn't certain. There was no single reason for the sudden turnabout, the surprising upswing, the unexpected rash of sales. But the proof of the change was not only here in the figures before him, but everywhere in the school itself. Brian had witnessed the feverish activity and how the chocolates had suddenly become a vogue, a fad. The way hula hoops had caught on when they were kids in the first or second grade. The way demonstrations had been the big thing a few years ago. Rumors indicated that the Vigils had adapted the sale as a special crusade. And that was possible, although Brian hadn't made any inquiries. He always steered clear of the Vigils. However, he had seen some of the more prominent Vigil members waylaying kids in the corridors, checking on their sales, whispering menacingly to those who had sold only a few boxes. Kind of evil. Each afternoon teams of the fellows left the school loaded down with chocolates. They piled into automobiles and drove off. Brian heard that the teams drove to various sections of town and invaded the neighborhoods, ringing doorbells, banging on doors, a massive sale effort as if they were all encyclopedia salesmen on commissions for crying out loud. Brian heard reports that someone had gotten permission to solicit at one of the local factories. 4 guys had circulated through the place and sold 300 boxes in a couple of hours. The feverish activity kept Brian hopping, maintaining the records, and then rushing down to the big boards in the assembly to post the results. The hall had become the school's focal point. "Hey, look!" a kid yelled out during the last posting. "Jimmy Demers sold us 50 boxes." That was the creepy aspect of the sale, the way the credit was being distributed among all the students. Brian didn't know whether this was fair or not, but he didn't agree with the methods. Brother Leon was interested in results, and so was Brian, and yet Brian was made uncomfortable by the situation. A few minutes ago Carter had walked into the office with a fistful of money. Brian treated Carter with utmost care. He was the head of the Vigils. "Okay, kid," Carter said, flinging the money bills and change on the desk. "Here's the returns. 75 boxes sold, $150. Count it." "Right." Brian leaped to the desk under Carter's watchful gaze. His fingers trembled, and he cautioned himself to make no mistakes. "Let it be 150 exactly." "Right on the nose," Brian reported, and then came the weird part. "Let me see the roster," Carter said. Brian handed over the list of names, each name with boxes beside it in which returns were noted as they arrived, corresponding with the master list on the big boards in the assembly hall. After studying the roster for a few minutes, Carter told Brian to credit various students with sale returns. Brian made the entries as Carter called them out. Hart, 13. DeLeo, 9. Lamone, 16. And so on until the entire 75 boxes had been distributed among the 7 or 8 students. "Those guys worked hard selling the chocolates," Carter said, a silly smile on his face. "I want to make sure they get their credit." "Right," Brian said, not making waves. He knew, of course, that none of the fellows chosen by Carter had sold the cut chocolates, but that was not his business. "How many guys reached the 50 quota today?" Carter asked. Brian consulted his figures. 6, counting Hart and LeBlanc. "Those sales are just me put them over the top." Brian actually was able to keep a straight face. "Know what, Crunchman? You're a bright boy. You're cool. You catch on fast." Fast? They'd been juggling the sales all week long, and Brian hadn't caught on for 2 entire days. He was tempted now to ask Carter if the campaign had turned the Vigils project like one of Archie Costello's assignments, but decided to hold down his curiosity. Before the afternoon had ended, the sale of 475 boxes had been received, cold, cold cash, as the teams returned to school with horns blowing, high with the hilarity of success. When Brother Leon arrived, they totaled the sales together and discovered that 15,010 boxes of chocolates had been sold thus far. Only 5,000 to go. Or 4,990 to be exact, as Brother Leon pointed out in the fussy, meticulous way of his. But Leon wasn't a problem today. He, too, seemed giddy, high, his wet eyes sparkling with the success of sale. He's a crazy one. He actually called Brian by his first name. And when Brian went to the assembly hall to post the latest figures, a cheering bunch of fellows applauded as he made the entries. No one had ever applauded Brian before, and he felt like a football hero of all things.